Sechas Nazir Daf Lamed Gimel is a very short daf, one of the shortest in Shas. We'll finish it quickly and then start Daf Lamed Dalid, all continuing the topic of the 6 people who saw somebody coming towards them and they couldn't tell who it was, and they made vows of Nazirus based on who they thought he was. We'll get to another Mishnah, which discusses a similar case, but there were 9 different versions of it, 9 different people. Then we'll end the 5th parak and begin the 6th parak, which starts into the halachas of Nazirus themselves and how they work. So in the Mishnah we saw 6 people who made Nazirus claims based on who the person was or who they thought he was not. And the Mishnah had said that if the person disappears and they never find out who he was, so the halacha is, at least the way our Mishnah brings the first opinion, we saw the halacha that there was no name that was given to the halacha, but we saw the halacha, the first opinion was that none of them are Nazirim. The second opinion is Rabbi Shimon that they're all Nazirim misafek, and therefore they should find a way out of the suffix. So Gemara wants to know, who is this opinion? So there are 3 opinions which we've seen in other brises discussing what happens when you make a Nazirus or a neder based on something and it's something which isn't clear at the time. So Rabbi Tarfon, as quoted by Rabbi Huda, holds it doesn't matter what you find out later. If at the time you made the neder, it wasn't clear, explicit that this is chal, it's not a good neder at all. And therefore he can't be the Tana of this Mishnah, because he would hold that even if you found out who the guy is later, no one's a Nazir, because at the time you made it, you didn't know who he was, so it's not clear. So it's not Rabbi Tarfon. Now, the opinion of Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Shimon are both in the case where someone sees a pile of grain and he says, I am a Nazir, or I am making a neder on the condition that this pile of grain contains at least 100 kor. And then they went and they measured it, and it came out that they couldn't measure it accurately because some of it was lost or stolen, and now they don't know how much was there at the time that he made the neder. So Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that in a case like that, since you never find out clearly, there's no Nazirus. It doesn't matter that it may have been that it was 100 kor at the time. Since you can't find out, a person has in mind that if I'm never going to find out for sure, then it's not a Nazirus, it's not a neder, it's not chal. So that's the opinion which we've seen quoted here in this Mishnah, that since we never find out who the guy was, it doesn't matter what he said, the Nazirus, which is a neder, is not chal, because a person only has in mind that it's going to have to be that I'm going to find out at some point whether it was true or not. Now, the other opinion is Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon says it's a suffix, therefore we have to deal with the suffix. So he says that in the case of the pile of grain also, he says, since if it is true that if it's known in Shemayim that at the time he made the neder there was 100 kor there, he's a Nazir. Therefore, at this point, we don't know if there's 100 kor because we can't find out because some of it was lost or stolen. He's a Nazir misafek, and therefore he's going to have to figure out what to do about the suffix. And in our Mishnah, he said he should make a altanai, he should make another Nazirus that is as a nedava if this one is no good. Okay, that concludes the Gemara. Now we get to our next Mishnah, which discusses 9 situations in which a neder was made based on something which was, again, not clear. This Mishnah is discussing where they saw a koi. A koi is an animal. It's not clear whether it's a chaya, a wild animal, or it's a behema, it's a domesticated animal. So the 9 Nazirus in that were made are as follows. First, there is, I'm a Nazir if it's a chaya. Second, I'm a Nazir if it's not a chaya. Third, I'm a Nazir if it's a behema. Fourth, I'm a Nazir if it's not a behema. Fifth, I'm a Nazir if it's a chaya and a behema. Sixth, I'm a Nazir if it's not a chaya and not a behema. Then you have, I'm a Nazir if one of you all is a Nazir. Then you have, I am a Nazir if none of you is a Nazir. And then you have, I'm a Nazir if all of you are a Nazir. So that's 9. Now, says the Mishnah, we have 2 different brises. One of them says that this is all one person who said all of this, and he's a Nazir 9 times if all of them are chal. And a different brise that says it's 9 different people and 9 different Nazirs. So the Gemara says 9 different people. I understand. They understand the last 3 cases make sense. They all make sense, but especially the last 3, because he says if one of you is a Nazir, if all of you are Nazir, or if none of you are a Nazir, he's referring to the other people. But if talking about one person, what's the last 3 cases? What does it mean? If all of you, if none of you? So the Gemara says it's talking about where it was different people who made the Nazirus originally when somebody else was watching them, and then he said, I'm a Nazir like all of you. He was makabel all 9 Nazirus upon himself at once as all 3. So in those cases, you could have 9 different Nazirus all applying to the same guy. This concludes the 5th parak of the Masechta. We now begin the 6th parak, which discusses the actual isurim that apply to a Nazir. So the Mishnah begins with a number of halachos. The Mishnah first says there are 3 isurim that apply to a Nazir. First of all, tumah, can't become tameh. Second, you can't take a haircut. And third, things which come from a grapevine, hayotzim and hagefen. And the Mishnah is going to focus on this halacha and go specifically into the details of things which are come from a grapevine. So the Mishnah says as follows. First of all parts of the grapevine, all parts of things which come from the grapevine can combine with each other to add up to a kizayis. You need to have a minimum of a kizayis to violate the Isser. The Mishnah phrases it as a kazayis of grapes. Umar will explain why it says grapes if there are other things included, not just grapes themselves. Now, the Mishnah continues and it says, at first, in the Mishnah Rishona, they said that you have to drink a revius, a quarter of a log of wine. Rabbi Kiva said, you don't have to actually drink the wine, even if you soak a quarter of a log of wine into bread and you ate the bread and you got all the quarter of a log of wine in the bread, that's the size of a kazayas, then you are violating the isser of drinking wine and having something which comes from the grapevine. Now, it says further that somebody can violate the Isser, and this is the first opinion here. Here we're going to have a machlokas, can violate the Isser with wine separately, grapes separately, and seeds separately, and zagim. So it speaks about chatzanim and zagim. The Gemara is going to have a machlokas, which is which. One is the seeds, one is the peel of the grapes, but one violates the Isser with either of those. Now, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, you can't just have any one kazayas of them. You have to have 2 chartzanim and 1 zag, because chartzanim is plural, zag is singular, so you have to have at least 2 chartzanim and 1 zag. Now, what are chartzanim and what are zagim? So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says you have to have 2 chartzanim and 1 zag. Chartzanim are the seeds, and zag is the chartzanim are the skins, he says, and zagim are the seeds. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says the opposite. Chartzanim are the seeds and zagim are the skins. And he says the way to remember that is zag sounds like zug. Zug refers to a bell. And the way you view it as the grape has, the skin of the grape is the bell. The seeds that are inside are like the tongue of the bell. So the entire thing from the outside is called the bell, and the inside is called the tongue of the bell. So the outside is the zag, and the inside, which is the inbol, the tongue of the bell, that is what's called chatzanim. Now the Gemara is going to focus on what about the grapevine itself. We spoke about things which come from the grapevine. Is the grapevine itself included in the Isser on the Nazir? So the Gemara says, we said that there are 3 types of Isurim, Tumah, and we said yotzim and hagefen, something which comes from the grapevine. That applies to the grapevine itself is not aser. So that is not like Rabbi Elazar. You have a brayso that quotes Rabbi Elazar, who says that even the leaves or the tendrils, the shoots, the parts that grow from the branches that grab onto things, those are also aser. And the branches themselves are not included because they're not really edible. The Gemara will discuss that soon. But the leaves and the tendrils of the grapevine, they themselves are also aser for the Nazir. Now, our Mishnah seems not to say the way, because the Mishnah says that it's only things which come from the vine and not the vine itself. Now, others have the same libun, that the Mishnah is not like Rabbi Elazar, but it comes from the end of the Mishnah, where the Mishnah says you're only chayav when you eat grapes, so that's only the grapes, or things which are similar to the grapes, but not the tree, meaning the tendrils and the leaves, not all that, and then therefore it's not like Rabbi Elazar, who says you're even chayav for the tendrils and for the leaves. Now, the Gemara says, what exactly is the machlekes? So we have here machlekes, and the Gemara brings a brayso. Rabbi Elazar says one is chayiv even for the shoots and the leaves, and the Tanakama holds you're not. So what's this machlekes based on? So the Gemara says there are inclusory and exclusory words in the pasuk describing the Isser. And the question is, do you view it as a riboy and a miyut or klal prat klal? We often find this around Shas. Sometimes when the Torah refers to specifics and to generals, we view it as a riboy and a miyut. When that happens, so you have a miyut and then a riboy, you include everything except for one thing. And you have a klal prat klal, so then you include only one thing and you exclude most things. So how do the drashas work here? So the Gemara explains Rabbi Elazar says it's a riboy and a miyat. So it says meyayin v'sheichor yazir. That's a specific. That's a miyat. That excludes a lot of things. Mikol sheyasa migefen hayayin. That includes things. It says mikol sheyasa. So you have an exclusion and an inclusion, and the halacha is you include everything except for one thing that was specifically excluded. So what is that? Branches. Hard branches are excluded, but everything else, including the leaves and the shoots, those are included. Now the Rabbanan say it's a klal prat klal. How's that? So it says, it says miyayin v'sheicher yazir. That's a prat. That's a very specific way of defining it. That's a klal. It's a general way of defining it. And then it says michatzanim v'adzag. That's a very specific way of defining it again. So whenever you have that, you have a klal prat klal, and the halacha is you only include in the klal things which are very similar to the prat. So you only include one thing. So what is the prat? So the prat is the fruit and the parts of the fruit that you don't eat. So therefore, you're only going to include the fruit and parts of the fruit that you do not eat. You're not going to include parts of the tree, parts of the plant or the vine. So how do you know it's meant to include fruits as well as the waste part of the fruits? Maybe it's only real fruits. Maybe it only means real full fruits. If you're being exclusive here, so limited just to fruits. So where says that can be, because then what do I need the last prat? Why do I need the klal and the prat? What am I including that's not written explicitly? Most things are said explicitly in the pasuk there. It says, it mentions grapes, fresh and dry. It mentions vinegar. It mentions all types of things. The only thing that it could be adding that's not mentioned has to be the messed up fruits, the rotten fruits, the bad fruits, the psolas of the fruits, and not good fruits. And therefore, that's what is being included here. Gemara now asks if you can have this drasha and you're going to include other things. So why do we need the last prat? Why do we need prat and klal and then a prat? You're going to include everything in the prat anyway. You're going to add the lower quality fruits. You're going to add things which are like fruits. You're going to add psolas fruits. You're going to add all these things. So what is the point in having a prat, a klal, and a prat? Just do the prat and klal. You don't include everything anyway. So the Gemara says no. If you would just have a prat and klal, you would have to include everything. The klal adds on everything to the prat. If you have a prat, klal, and prat, then the klal only adds things which are similar to the upcoming prat, and therefore it limits the inclusion to the things which are fruit or psolas of fruits. And says the Gemara, this is actually the source of this drasha, this style of drasha throughout Shas. Everywhere where we say klal, prat, klal, where we say prat, klal, and prat, you only add things which are similar to the klal. That is all learned from here, from Nazir, where it says prat, klal, prat, and that's how we know this halacha. All right, now the Gemara begins commenting on this brisa. The Gemara wants to know, how do you know? What are the things, the Gemara wants to know? What are the things that we are including? We said that the prat adds things which are similar to the prat, which are fruit and psolas fruit. So what are we adding? What's fruit and psolas fruit that's being added besides what is actually listed? So the Gemara says fruit actually itself is grapes. Psolas fruit is vinegar. Now, what are we adding to fruit? So we're adding what the Gemara calls guharki, which is little tiny grapes that never mature. They're squashed between larger grapes on the vine. And what we're adding to psolas pri is is wormy fruits. They are also like psolas of the fruits, and they are the wormy ones. So we add that as well. All right. Now the Gemara says, why does it say michartanim v'ad zag? What's the v'ad for? What is v'ad adding? So the Gemara says that's to add what's called vein habinayim. Machlokes is showing what that means. One shot is that it means there's like a fermented kind of mushy area between the fruit and the skin, and that's where sediment forms. So that's between. So we're adding that as well.